This, sadly, is the story that's marking this country and many others around the world. A tragic story of us versus them, a zero-sum story of competition, exclusion, and discrimination. We are convinced that another story is possible. We call it an experiment. We call it a different story. We call it Casa Adobe. Welcome to a sneak preview of life in Casa Adobe, the intentional Christian community where we share life in Santo Domingo de Heredia, Costa Rica. We see ourselves as the adobes, mud bricks, fragile on their own, in need of constant upkeep, but able together to constitute a home, a refuge for those in need. We have grown to include several families and young people who are seeking to live in right relations with God, with one another, with our neighbors, and with the rest of creation. We share a common pot for regular expenses and, of course, plenty of cooking, which requires plenty of in-house food production and plenty of shared meals. Plenty of shared fun, like Santa's silly socks as an annual Christmas ritual. We share evening Bible studies on Sundays and gather around the communion table. Finally, we accompany young people who come to serve and discern their vocation as followers of Jesus, committed to living a different story than the ruling one of us versus them. Our story continues with the birth 11 years ago of a small local nonprofit dedicated to being good neighbors to all within our watershed, human and non-human. With a committed board and team, we accompany our neighbors by tutoring and creative play with kids in this underprivileged neighborhood, by growing trees, engaging our neighbors in planting them, cleaning the river and reforesting, seeking to reestablish the relationship of our human neighbors with our neighbor the river, and building toward a public park by the Padilla River. Up the hill in the cloud forest, water and wildlife surround Casa Nube and offer local and foreign guests spirit-led refreshment, fresh provocations, and opportunities for creation care, conservation, and scientific research of our watershed. Further away, on the border between Costa Rica and Nicaragua, Casa Esperanza offers a safe respite, food, and lodging to migrants and refugees. We hope to help many of these vulnerable people settle in Costa Rica instead of continuing the risky journey onward to a country where we know they are not welcome. Responding to their needs has stretched our finances far beyond our budgeted projections. Again, when this is the dominant story which threatens to swallow every other one up, we say no. A different story is possible, one of living in community, one of good neighboring. So we keep dreaming. We dream of kids swimming and fishing again in the Padilla River, of native trees growing tall in what today is a trash dump, of families picnicking in the ecological park, of a neighborhood caring for and enjoying its rivers and streams, of migratory birds and fleeing humans finding a place of rest and restoration, of children thriving in school and life, of visitors learning and caring together with locals for this watershed and committing to caring for their own. We invite you to become a part of this different story. We invite you to partner with Casa Adobe so we can achieve our dreams and help us all, both here and there, grow in being good neighbors. Support us with a donation, small or large, a one-time gift or an ongoing contribution. We're seeking to raise $200,000 to respond to the urgent need of migrants and refugees who will not find a welcome in this country. Join us in designing and running educational, theological, recreational, and scientific courses and experiences. Come down for bird watching and searching for the almost extinct frog. Rent a room during your sabbatical. Stay and volunteer. Gather for a retreat, a family get-together, or a destination wedding. Finally, you may want to join us or promote our upcoming educational opportunities for people from near and far. Join us and Sylvia Kismat for a theological and practical workshop titled O Healing River, Hope for the Watershed. Journey with us on the migrant route to see what can be learned from their resilience and faith. Encourage your kids or grandkids to come and see as faith meets adventure in Central America. We give you thanks for your time, and we encourage you to continue imagining. Let's imagine together how we can live into a different story. Thank you. So that gives you a little bit of a picture. Of course, this is not intended to ask you for money. This is something we prepared as part of our fundraising effort from Casa Adobe. But it was worth showing you the photos so that you can get a feel for our little world down there, and the people and the places. And so again, this calling of recognizing that our neighbors are not just human, but that we are part of this network of life that we are dependent on. I have a friend, I'm spacing out on his name, Native Canadian, almost there. Okay, you wouldn't remember it anyway, even if I told you. So he said to me, Ruth, tell me one time when you gave more to the rest of creation than the rest of creation gave to you. We are absolutely dependent on the land, on its fruits, on the air, on water, on everything, to the extent that we absolutely would not survive without them. We're designed by God as part of this creation community. And how often do we stop and acknowledge that? We just go about our business and do our thing. So what does it mean to engage in watershed discipleship? This isn't just about us being compassionate towards the river, as we do with Casa Adobe, of cleaning it up, of testing the water to see where the pollutants are coming from, of reforesting around it so as to renew the biodiversity and bring birds and reptiles back. It's not just about what we do for, but it's our acknowledgement of what the watershed itself and all its constitutive parts are essential for us. And maybe we actually need to learn from it. We need to learn from the interdependence of all its different ingredients, of all its different members, actually, of how they interact, of how one, you know the story, I think Nemo made this well known, the interaction, the symbiotic relationship between a clownfish and an anemone, where the anemone provides protection for the clownfish cleans it out, and they relate to each other in a way that is mutually dependent and mutually sustaining. Is there something there for us as human beings? And even connected to the sermon from today, we need one another. Can we learn from our watershed, from its members, and how they interact and support one another and sustain each other's life? Can that be something that we learn from about what it means to be part of a life-sustaining community of mutual dependence and support? So that's when we talk about watershed discipleship again. We're not talking just about what we do for our watershed, but what we learn from all its members. So that's the challenge I want to raise for us. It's for us to kind of parse out some of the implications of this. What might it look like if we recognized ourselves as members of this community of creation? And what would it mean if we were willing to learn from the rest of creation in the way we operate as human beings? So then we're expanding our definition of neighbor and of neighborhood so as to be part of God's good purposes. Because God did not just create human beings and put a pretty setting. All of this is part of the diverse, thriving, life-giving creation that God created and put us as members of. And yes, we are responsible and called to a particular responsibility in relation to the rest of creation, but we're also members of that community. So I just thought we'll just kind of throw out some ideas here and would love to hear from you, some of your questions born out of what you heard or what you saw. And I might even invite my husband, Jim, to come up and respond to some of your questions, because this is our last Sunday in Michigan. We head back to Costa Rica on Thursday to continue our life and work down there. I continue teaching with Western, but do so only online in the spring. So this is our last chance to have a little bit of interaction with you as Third Reformed community. So questions, thoughts? Yes.
What are you seeing with an influx from Nicaragua? Is that presenting a danger situation for you and your husband and others?
All right. So actually, it's not. Costa Rica is a pretty stable country, has been historically. So it has received many Nicaraguans historically. There are 1.5 million, 2 million Nicaraguans living in Costa Rica. The influx of migrants is actually coming from the south because it's Costa Rica, Nicaragua's north. It's people coming from Venezuela, Colombia, and the rest of the world coming up through Panama into Costa Rica. So our site, Casa Esperanza, Hope House, Hope Home, is on the border of Costa Rica with Nicaragua. And it's receiving people that are coming from further south. And no, it's not a threat to us. It's not at all a threat. These people are extremely vulnerable and not in the least dangerous. They are coming, fleeing the violence in their countries, fleeing oppression in their countries, fleeing, seeking to feed their kids. And they're coming with their kids. They're walking through impassable jungles and getting bussed from one border to another because nobody really wants them. And so Casa Esperanza is a bit of a respite place for them. So some food, some lodging, it's a drop in the bucket of the reality of this horrendous picture of people displaced. So not a threat to us in the least. Yes.
What kind of facility do you have? How many people can you accommodate? Do you have plans to try to build like a compound for safety for them? Or what's the ultimate goal if you want to keep them there rather than have them continue where they're not wanted, which is tragic in itself?
Right. So, as I said, it is a tiny drop in an ocean of need. And we're aware of that. We are not going to solve the migration problem. But we are thus far able to feed some people, listen to their stories, accompany them. There's a psychologist listening to the stories of women who've been traumatized by the experience. Many of them have been raped along the way. Most of them have been robbed along the way. I mean, the plight is just, it's not just the strenuous walk. That's the least of it. So thus far, all we're able to do is give some meals, some breakfasts and lunches, and there's a shelter that can put 40 people, only 40 people. And we've actually had to shut it down, at least temporarily, because of lack of funding. So that's why we put this plug, and people are welcome to. And Third has been supporting. Third actually purchased a stove for this house so that the meals could be prepared for people. So you have been a part of this, maybe knowing, maybe not even knowing it, but you have been a part of this, and you could continue being more so. If we have the funding, we could open the shelter back up. But the hope is not to house everybody indefinitely. It's actually, hopefully, we can relocate them in more sustainable ways. So we've been able to help a few families through the years find a farm where they can, because many of the people that we've connected to have been farmers, locate them with a farm where they can actually be employed long term. So we're not trying to keep them all in a safe place, but to engage them in the local neighborhood or other cities around the area. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You kind of answered my question in that I was wondering, how successful are you in being able to get these people to understand that they would be better off staying in Costa Rica than coming to the U.S. that has very unfriendly policies?
Yeah, it's an uphill battle. I mean, many of them actually have family up here, so they want to come. For many, the imaginary is this is the land of plenty. The American dream is still very, very present in people's minds, and so they are set to make it. We are the ones that know that this is not making it, that there's not a whole lot of opportunity for them, but. So it is kind of just bit by bit with some. And actually, some of the people that are staffing Casa Esperanza are migrants themselves that have decided to stop and stay. And so they are volunteering or getting a little stipend to be able to contribute to taking care of other people that are in more vulnerable conditions.
Going along with that, Ruth, how well-informed are they? They have this vision of the wonderful life in America, but how much do they know about what's happening to the migrant trail and to people who just don't make it?
What would you say?
One of the cardboard posters said, no more misinformation. So it's a very vulnerable population. And that vulnerability is real. Like the government of Venezuela collapsed. Nicaragua is really oppressive. And we have people like from Afghanistan and the Congo. It's just amazing. I don't know, So they're coming from real situations that they know are incredibly bad, and they've chosen to get on the road. And I think that decision is pretty well informed, they aren't making it wherever they've been. And no one picks up roots and kids and babies and, goes off on foot without being pretty convinced that where they are is unsafe. Then they get in this stream, right? Well, first they're in this stream of like Hollywood movies and TV shows, and everything up here is wonderful, and everyone drives a big truck and has a wonderful house and, eats well and sleeps well. No one tells the story that you got to work 3 jobs, for 10 years to be able to even pay off your car and maybe start saving for a down payment or something like that. So that's one level of sort of misinformation and non-informed. And then there's like, I don't know how many of you use WhatsApp, but it's a little messaging app. And there's all these little groups of people trying to be helpful and like bond together and say, these are the safe spots along the way. And then there is other set of people like, be scared, don't trust anyone. And even right in Los Chiles, we get anywhere between 10 and 15 buses every night. And as those people are coming out of the door of the bus, there are these unsavory characters right there trying to scare them, saying that you are at threat right now. I will throw you in my taxi and take you to the border, or I know a safe place to hide, and then they'll charge them a bunch of money, and so and then these WhatsApp groups, these chat groups get infiltrated by people that trying to scare people and try and drive them not to a Casa Esperanza safe house, but to some place controlled maybe by a Mexican drug cartel or something. And so, and then, oh, Trump's coming, so come quick through Mexico, or, they're going to do this. And there's always this rumor mill of trying to keep people vulnerable and scared.
Yeah, back there.
Thank you. It's a very broad question, so answer with the scope that you want. But I was wondering to what extent, like, the U.S. government policies impact the function of the three houses and the work that you guys are doing.
You go for it. He's a political scientist. We'll let him take that one.
Yeah, very much so is the very short answer. Even so, we built a model for Casa Esperanza on the idea that we would get some funding from the UN agencies and other bigger nonprofits to help sponsor stays. Politics up here. So, we just had an election, and the Democratic, administration didn't want to get caught funding migrants to stay in nice, safe places, or even appear to be helping them get here. So the U.S., for example, cut off all of their funding to the
UN.
Yeah, one of the big UN immigration agency. And so there is no money. And, people in the UN Human Rights Commission, or, High Commissioner for Refugees,
UNHCR.
there's no money. And the U.S. money has dried up, and this is a worldwide problem too. So the European nations, some of them are still giving, but they've got the Mediterranean instead of the Panamanian jungle, and we just live in a really unbalanced, unequal world. So walls are a nice idea, but when there's so much unevenness in the world, water flows, to where it's going to go. So whatever we might do policy-wise about tightening borders or the like, if there are countries that have completely fallen apart, like Venezuela, people are going to leave. Countries like Haiti that are pure, we have a lot of Haitians too. It's just people are going to leave. They know, they know it's safer to leave. And then it's, what do we do? We have asylum laws here, and they were written because the Jews trying to flee Nazi Germany were stopped along the way and weren't able to proceed, like out of Spain and Portugal. And they died in gas chambers because of that, So our laws actually allow people to make this journey and ask for asylum. No, they couldn't be denied it, but legally they aren't doing anything wrong to come, leave their country out of fear, and ask for safe passage or safe harbor.
I don't mean to make this a dialogue.
I had been told, and maybe this is incorrect, and I'd like to know, that our asylum laws grant asylum if you're threatened by a government, but not by gangs. So people leaving Haiti, it's the gangs. They don't really have much government. So am I wrong? I mean, I hope I am, but we know cases where people fled gangs and they aren't granted asylum. Should they be? Are they misinterpreting these laws?
Yeah, the asylum law has a bunch of very technical definitions, and gangs wasn't in there when they wrote it. Persecution also for like being homosexual wasn't in there. There are things about ethnicity, religion. I don't have the whole thing memorized. There's also, the ability to judge a case and be a little more open or a little less. So I don't think it's technically wrong to say gangs don't count, but gangs, the main definition is a legitimate fear. And you should be scared of some of these gangs if they're in your neighborhood. And so I would say a judge of good character and would say that's a legitimate fear.
A legitimate threat to your life. Mhm.
I want to give other people a chance, but our small group from Third had a chance to go down and start to see some of the reforestation and the river projects and things like that, as well as Casa Esperanza. But I'm wondering, as you've got into this now for some months and are doing the reforestation work, how have your human neighbors received this work, and what have you noticed in your community about that?
So what's been fascinating is as we grew in kind of our understanding of our neighborhood and who our neighbor was, we began this engagement with the local river. Now, when we started asking questions in the neighborhood, many people remember swimming in that river, fishing in that river. Today, you don't want that river to touch your skin. It is so polluted. And one generation, right? Because it's not even extremely old people that remember. It's middle-aged people remember being there. And so our whole attempt is not just let's do good to the river. It's let's re-engage our neighbors with this that is their neighbor. And can they start, instead of just dumping trash and walking with their back to the river, can they turn back to the river and enjoy it and learn to engage with it? And so the attempt to reforest means also, so clean up, reforesting, planting trees in the along the edge, with the dream of having a neighborhood park. This is a working class neighborhood, a lot of cement. People that have never really, you think of Costa Rica, how many have been there already? Some of you have been there, right? Tourists galore. I mean, tourists come down. Costa Rica is the safe haven for green tourism, but local people don't necessarily have an opportunity to enjoy that. So our dream of growing by bringing our neighbors together. You saw a picture there. We've had the scouts coming down to plant trees. There's a group of elderly people that call themselves the caminantes, the people who walk. They walk the neighborhood. They walk and do little hikes and such. 100 of them came down and planted trees with us. So we're beginning to see the turn from having their back to the river to re-engaging with the river and claiming it as their neighbor also. So that's been one of the gifts. And when we talk about watershed, we're realizing it's not just that river, it's the whole system, right? So the other house, Casa Nube in the cloud forest, actually is one of the tributaries to the one by our place, the Padilla, and this one in turn goes to the main thoroughfare, the Tárcoles, that goes down into the ocean. So we're growing to see this whole system so that we can start recovering, and life can again sprout, birds and animals and other plants and such, and we can restore the neighborhood, the watershed. Mhm. Thanks for that question. Yes.
Is the pollution mainly from the people, or do you have industrial pollution?
Yes.
And if you
yes.
have industrial pollution, are there people fighting you because they don't want to change their industry?
Do you want to explain that one?
Yeah, all of the above, and one you didn't mention. So there's, people dumping plastic bottles and bags and that kind of thing. There are cities or housing developments that fail to enforce their sanitation laws, so their wastes are going into the river.
Industry.
And there is agricultural waste, so coffee processing, and especially lately tomatoes, which you may eventually eat, are planted and sprayed pretty heavily, and then that goes in the runoff. And then our neighborhood is actually zoned industrial, and there are some small assembly plants and the like that historically have also dumped there. And our long-term game plan is, we get people that love the river, we get to visit, and then we start asking those tougher questions, not just as individuals, but as a community that cares, and then we might have a little bit more political power.
And linking to other groups that are friends of the same river upstream and such. So networking, partnering, so that we can advocate. And we have been already. One of our team members is a lawyer, and he has been, he was successful in getting a prohibition for dumping in the area, by, slowly demanding and getting the ecological monitoring service of the district to prohibit dumping there. And we've even had congressperson come visit the whole thing. So we're trying to work at all these levels, both the very grassroots, but eventually more at the policy level. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So as you are working to, live kind of in community with this neighborhood and environment, what kind of messages or opportunities is that? What opportunities does that give you to give messages to the people who are seeking shelter and asylum and feel like they have no place in a neighborhood or just community like that?
Yeah, the community Casa Adobe is, our small particular effort to live out a really full-bodied faith in a lot of different areas like migration, hospitality, environment, justice, and church. So we're just a little like a house church or something. And then we have a lot of big work. But at the center of that house church testimony is an invitation, you can live a different way that is really rooted in the deepest principles of the biblical story, the life of Jesus, the life of the primitive church. And that hospitality, for example, of the primitive church invites more and more people to be welcoming, to accept people, to make a room available. And so we don't pretend to work at some big scale of some big NGO or the UN, but we have a lot of young people come through, and we have a lot of people come through, and invite.
Sorry, but you might have actually noticed in the picture there were two Western students that you might have met and another prospective student that you will meet in the fall next year.
And a dean.
Yeah, she did her sabbatical.
So all that. We're just a little simple community, but we're trying to provoke people's imaginations that there is other possibilities. There are, you can open your door, you can step a little bit deeper into your walk of faith. And we've had quite an impact. I think we've had a lot of people come through, and a lot of people view us, our community, as a reference point to, or a hinge point in changing their life to do a bit more, walk a little closer to Jesus.
Yes.
Is it possible for you to be, how would you go about becoming a missionary? We have all these missionary shares. Are you able to become missionaries with the RCA, that you could have mission shares?
Thank you. And I didn't even pay you to ask that question. I am in the process of trying to become a missionary of Third and the RCA. I think we're pretty far along that path. Tomorrow I have a meeting with another RCA church where we're trying to become a missionary. And we'd love to invite people through the Third or individually to support us. And if you want to do that, we have little cards, and it's really a struggle. I've been a missionary for 35 years. We've been missionaries with the Christian Reformed Church, but there's a lot of turmoil over there. So we're trying to cast a wider net right now and include RCA churches in our support.
The other thing is, as just members of the Third congregation, would it be possible to have this information put into our weekly newsletter with a place to send a check and who to make it out to and so on? Can you do that, Ryan?
I give this mic to Ryan.
Do you want
Yes, is the answer. Yes. Yes, we can do that. So I would connect with Bethany, who is the chair of our outreach committee, and we could probably put something together on behalf of the team and get that in. But if that comes as a request from the congregation, that makes a lot of sense. So thank you. Yeah.
All right. I am passionate about education. I am wondering, as people come into you with money that they've put together to make this long journey, that the other, what do they call the people that take the money away from them to get them on the bus? And there's a term, and I don't remember what that is, but they have the money. Can they stay and hear the story from either people coming back who have been denied entry to the United States, who have had the experience of all the hazards and pains and difficulties? Can they then, maybe as you indicated earlier, that there were some that were developing farmland, and can they develop with the money that they still have with them before these dishonest people take it away from them? Is there any hope that that could happen in Costa Rica?
Yeah, Costa Rica has a long history of taking in refugees and asylees. It's also a very small country. As the number of people that Costa Rica takes in goes up, there's more resistance to the change it implies for society, just like here. So that the message does get out. The message, like, it's dangerous, it's hard. But a simple fact of like the world system is if you're in like some country like Venezuela where a doctor makes $15 a month, literally, and your family can put together enough money. And in our community, we just have one Venezuelan dental technician get up here on a asylum visa, and she just got a job, and in that job, she's going to make really quite good money compared to her other sisters and her nephews and nieces. And so people will bet on someone making it up here, and they'll invest. And then that person, in this case, Astrid, is now a dental technician. She's got a good job. You think, wow, she's going to get ahead. But what she's actually probably going to do is send half of her money back home and sustain people that can stay. So that has a way of helping too, because if she works here and sends money back, then those people eat. So it's just terribly complex issue. We saw in Germany, Angela Merkel was very welcoming, and then the Germans got sick of being so welcoming and threw her out. It's too much change maybe for U.S. society sometimes, but there's also too much need. And so when these tough realities hit, there isn't a great policy prescription that will fit it all. But what always is called for is for us Christians to love our neighbors.
Am I naive to think that there is land that can be developed, that there could be a way of helping people who are coming into the system to realize that, yes, there are dangers, there are hazards that are probably no worse than they had experienced when they left. But if they could be aware of the problem, I think about our own country. It's not that long ago that we were all immigrants here. There was land to be developed. There were opportunities here. Is that possible in Costa Rica, or is it already so well developed? And I'm not looking at government support. I'm talking about self-help, that they could put together their own funds and work something through and stay there, or is that unreal?
Yeah. People leaving Venezuela are pretty out of money. People leaving Haiti are pretty much out of money. I worked in a big project. You've probably heard for Habitat for Humanity. It builds people houses. I described this as Habitat for Humanity on steroids. It was a foundation out of Seattle and Microsoft millionaires and Boeing millionaires and all those people and we would buy huge tracts of land and start a whole new village. Literally a whole new village of 300 families and with land for farming and the whole thing. But that was a stretch even for the Microsoft billionaires, to fund that. So the poor you will always have with you. But what will you do with your heart? What more can we do? They can try. They will try. They are incredibly entrepreneurial, incredibly hopeful, incredibly resilient. And they'll do the best they can, but they're always going to need our help too.
There's another question here.
When people send money home, how much of it gets there? I would think these gangs would be onto that and know who has relatives in the States and be watching their mail.
You're pretty perceptive. So, I mean, nowadays, with Western Union and PayPal and Venmo and all those things, it's pretty easy to get money moved around. But for example, a family we had in our community quite a while ago. A guy who now has a doctorate and just wrote a book.
Not yet.
Oh,
He's on
okay.
his
Oh,
doctorate.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
on
He's
track.
in his PhD process. The money that came into El Salvador helped his brother start a little transport business, delivery business to deliver products out into the smaller villages where, you know, other people weren't delivering. And then the gangs came and they said, we want a cut. And you don't have much choice. So he gave a cut. And then they called him up one day and the brother went to meet them and they killed him. And
He was late on his payment, they said.
yeah,
So that was it.
that was it. His brother, 3 days later, well, his brother that day, I think, or the next morning, called us up and said, can I come to Costa Rica
Well,
and live with you?
because at the funeral for his brother, the operation, the mode of operation is go to the funeral.
So
to
think
check
of
out-
this room.
Check out who the closest relatives are and start extorting them, because that van that was used for delivery obviously would stay in the family. So then I'm going to charge them their,
So
their
the
tax.
Funeral is like this big. The gang members come in. You get scared and you leave. You get scared and you leave. And who's left?
closest
The
family.
very closest relatives. And now they know who to charge. And so this guy that lived with us got a call the next day on his own cell phone, but with
From
caller ID, it appeared to be his brother, the brother that was killed and laying in the coffin, because they'd taken his phone. They are asking for more money. So that's why people leave.
Okay, so maybe this is getting more to the heart of my inquiry. The idea that it is not happening only outside of Costa Rica. There are Costa Rican gangs who are doing this same thing to take
No,
advantage.
this particular story was El Salvador, but sadly, Costa Rica it has been a very stable society.
That's what I,
And of the world, it is one of the least unequal societies, far less unequal than the US, where a white family has 8 times the income of a Black family and 5 times the income of a Latino family. So Costa Rica historically has been far less unequal, but given just the global economy and such, things have been changing and it is getting more tricky. More narco trafficking, more drug trafficking and narco money, and consequently, also cuts in health and education that have historically been one of the hallmarks of the country. Costa Rica has no army, so they've invested all the money that you would pay to have a standing army and to buy weapons. They invested in health and education. That's contributed to the small inequality. But sadly, it is eroding. But this story we told was about El Salvador specifically, not Costa Rica.
and what about police service? You talk about health. What about police service?
Yeah, there is.
Is there a justice system?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, there's a good justice system. One of the members on our team is a lawyer and he works for, he doesn't like me to say this, the equivalent of the FBI, because it's not exactly like the FBI. There's some technical differences, but it's basically the FBI.
There's one more question over there.
This is a different direction, but are you working with some of the scientific community that's doing research down there?
Right. So we are connected to local universities and increasingly working on the environmental science side of things, because we want to contribute. I mean, even caring for the river, picking up dirt, plastic is one thing, but actually doing the water studies and all of that requires. So slowly we've been building up on that. To be honest, that has one of our goals. We haven't dug in as deep as we want, but we're looking forward to that because Casa Esperanza took up a lot of our energy also, the migrant work.
And these
Yeah.
cards we have are to donate to Arosha. Arosha is a Christian conservation organization internationally that does a lot of scientific research. And we are now a member of that community. And we are starting to bring in, like we have a guy that did his doctoral, probably, I don't know, thesis on birds of prey and bans birds in Oregon, and he's going to try and help us establish a bird banding day in Casanube. We have an agreement with the administrative body of all the national parks to be able to do studies in the national parks, and there's one right next to Casanube. And we're starting to do citizen science in the river, taking measurements. And we just got, we're starting to get a lot of contact. We have a forester that wants to retire there and help us do forest work. So we're trying to build up a number of scientific programs that aren't quite there yet. But you're welcome to join us.
I'm not a scientist, but some retired biologists at Hope forever since we came in 1978 have a house in Costa Rica and where they do research and take students. And I can't believe they're the only ones. So I think there probably are lots of people that would be interested in supporting what you're doing and know a lot about how to do that.
So we do have these cards that have a little QR code that if you use your phone or get your kids or grandkids to help you with it, but it'll send you to our website where you can find out more. You could sign up for a newsletter and such. So if anybody's interested, just take one when you leave. I'll leave them here on the chairs.
And it looks like we'll be approved RCA missionaries by early next year. But if you want to also donate through the church, I'm sure that could be arranged.
Have you contacted Hope College to see if I'm thinking because Costa Rica is a safe place to send students. Mm-hmm. If you have teamed with them with, I know they do water samples in front of my house all the time, but they already
right.
are. Okay.
If you want to just pass them back if you don't.
Yeah, we are. A good friend of ours called us the best networked and most under-resourced people. So we're working on that. And we have a lot of balls in there. And we just invite people to join us and help us create those connections, because we got great teams of people down in Costa Rica working on this. And sometimes we can't juggle all the balls, but we invite people to, join in letting God's beautiful creation just disciple us into things like diversity is beautiful. Go to a rainforest. There are limits on what we can consume. We raise some of our own animals, It's easy to go to the restaurant and get a New York strip every time you want. But if you raise an animal, you only get a couple New York strips. And so the being close to nature, it's very biblical and it's very instructive. And so come visit. It's also cold up here in February and March, and sometimes people get sick of the snow. We don't have snow.
Well, the tyrant of time has arrived, and we just so much appreciate, and especially the interaction, I think, that has occurred today with the questions from the group. So thanks to all of you, and especially to the Padilla DeBorst.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Best wishes to you. Ruthie.